"Save me," begged the Apache girl hanging from the tree. The cowboy saved her for a price. The sun burned low in the sky, casting long shadows across the jagged canyon. Dust rose in waves from the dry desert ground, mixing with the faint hum of distant mining drones. The frontier stretched endlessly, a harsh land where only the strongest or the cleverest could survive. Somewhere in that unforgiving expanse, danger waited. High above a deep canyon, a young Apache girl struggled against the ropes that bound her wrists to a tree branch. Her feet dangled above the jagged rocks below, and her breath came in sharp, panicked bursts. She had tried to fight, to break free, but the bandits were too strong, too cunning. They had left her there as a warning, their laughter echoing off the canyon walls. "Help! Someone help me!" she cried, her voice trembling with fear. The wind caught her words and carried them across the canyon, hoping, praying that someone might hear. Far across the rocky terrain, a lone figure rode along a narrow ridge. His horse, or rather, the strange hovering craft shaped like a horse, glided over the rocks with ease. Dust followed him like a cloud, but he rode with calm precision, scanning the canyon below with eyes sharp as a hawk's. The cowboy had seen many things in his life. Deserts that burned the skin, towns where law had no meaning, and bandits who preyed on the helpless. But there was something in the girl's voice that made him stop. He pulled his craft closer to the edge of the ridge and squinted down. A young girl hanging from a tree, fighting against ropes and ropes alone against the cruel wind. Her hair, dark and wild, whipped across her face. Her clothes were torn and dusty, her arms raw from the bindings. The cowboy felt a tight knot form in his chest. He did not know her yet, he could not leave her there. He reached for his rifle, a sleek weapon that looked old-fashioned but held the power of a laser pulse. He studied the bandits below, 3 men armed with weapons that gleamed in the dying sunlight. Their drones hovered nearby, scanning for any signs of trouble. The cowboy's jaw tightened. He could not charge in recklessly, not with the girl's life hanging in the balance. He had to be smart. Slowly, he dismounted from his hovercraft and moved toward the canyon's edge, crouching behind rocks that offered cover. He observed their patterns, how they laughed and gestured, not noticing the threat waiting above them. The girl's voice broke through again. "Please, I don't want to die." The cowboy's eyes softened. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "Not today." He raised his rifle and fired a precise shot at the drone hovering closest to the girl. It sparked and fell, crashing against the rocks far below. The other bandits shouted in alarm, scanning the area. But the cowboy was already moving. Dropping from the ridge with a controlled leap, he landed on a narrow ledge behind the bandits. They turned, weapons raised, but he was already moving faster than their eyes could follow. A pulse of light from his rifle disarmed one, and the second fell back, tripping over the uneven rocks. The third bandit aimed, but the cowboy rolled and fired again, hitting the weapon instead of the man. Sparks flew, blinding him just long enough for the cowboy to reach the tree. The girl's eyes widened in surprise and relief. You're here," she stammered, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and hope. "Hold still," the cowboy said, his voice calm and steady. He reached up and cut the ropes binding her wrists. The girl sagged into his arms, exhausted, trembling from the ordeal. He caught her before she could fall, supporting her weight as she struggled to regain her balance. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just a man trying to do what's right," he said. He scanned the canyon again. The bandits were regrouping, furious that their prey had been taken. "We don't have much time," he added. "Follow me and stay low." The girl nodded, still unsure, but there was no other choice. She climbed onto the hovercraft behind him, gripping tightly as it lifted off the ground. The bandits fired after them, but the cowboy maneuvered with skill, weaving between jagged rocks and dust clouds. Laser pulses bounced off the canyon walls, missing them narrowly. As they cleared the canyon, the girl finally allowed herself to speak. Why did you help me?" she asked. The cowboy didn't answer immediately. He focused on the path ahead, the dangerous terrain, and the possibility of more bandits. After a moment he spoke, "Because no one else would." His voice carried a weight that the girl couldn't fully understand, but she felt it in her bones. Hours passed as they moved across the frontier. The desert stretched endlessly, dotted with the ruins of old settlements and strange glowing rocks that pulsed faintly under the setting sun. The girl asked questions about him, but he gave little away. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly, always alert, always cautious. Finally, they reached a small abandoned outpost, a place where the bandits would not easily follow. The cowboy landed the hovercraft behind a crumbling wall and helped the girl down. She looked at him uncertain, and he spoke again, his tone serious. "There's a price for my help," he said. The girl frowned, confused. I don't have money," she said, fear creeping back into her voice. "It's not money I want," the cowboy said. "I want your trust. You follow my lead, and you live. You make a wrong move, and you don't." The girl's eyes widened. She had been rescued, but freedom came with rules she hadn't expected. She swallowed hard and nodded slowly. I'll trust you," she said, though her voice was hesitant. The cowboy gave a small nod. "Good. Then let's keep moving." Night fell over the desert, and the stars shone like scattered diamonds across the sky. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of danger, dust, and a hint of distant metal from mining operations. They made a small camp in the outpost, keeping watch through the night. The girl tried to rest, but her mind raced with fear and questions. Who were the bandits? Why had they taken her? And most importantly, who was this mysterious cowboy who had saved her? The cowboy sat nearby, sharpening a blade with careful precision. He didn't speak, but his eyes watched the horizon, alert to any movement. He was a man of few words, but every action he took spoke louder than anything he could say. As the first light of dawn crept over the canyon, the girl finally spoke again. "Thank you," she said softly. I owe you my life." The cowboy nodded without looking up. "You owe me nothing. Just keep your wits about you. The frontier isn't safe for anyone, especially not someone alone." She understood that her journey had just begun. The rescue was only the first step, and the path ahead would be long, dangerous, and uncertain. But for the first time in hours, she felt a small spark of hope. She had survived the tree, the bandits, and the canyon, and maybe, just maybe, she had found someone she could rely on. The cowboy mounted the hovercraft again, offering his hand to the girl. "Come on," he said. "The frontier won't wait, and neither will they." She took his hand, climbed aboard, and held on tightly. Together, they rose above the canyon, leaving the tree and the bandits behind, ready to face the challenges ahead. The desert stretched out endlessly before them, full of danger, adventure, and possibilities neither of them could yet imagine. And so, the cowboy and the Apache girl set off across the frontier, a fragile alliance born of desperation, trust, and the promise of survival. The wind carried their silhouettes across the jagged landscape, and the sun rose higher, casting long shadows behind them. Somewhere in the distance, the bandits would regroup, and new dangers awaited. But for now, the girl was safe, and the cowboy had kept his word. The sun climbed higher over the desert horizon, painting the jagged canyon rocks with warm shades of orange and gold. The wind carried the faint hum of distant mining drones, their lights flickering like stars across the barren landscape. The Apache girl sat behind the cowboy on the hovercraft, gripping the leather straps tightly. Her heart still pounded from the ordeal of yesterday, but she felt a small steadying sense of relief. For the first time in days, she was alive, and she was not alone. The cowboy's eyes never left the path ahead. He navigated the rocky terrain with careful precision, leaning slightly to guide the hovercraft through narrow ridges and sudden drops. His face was calm, unreadable, but his mind worked constantly, calculating every move, every risk. "You ride well," the girl said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost afraid to disturb the cowboy's focus. He glanced at her briefly. "Better keep your wits about you. The desert has a way of teaching lessons, sometimes hard ones." The warning was clear. This journey would not be easy. She had survived the bandits, but the frontier itself could be just as dangerous. Hours passed in relative silence. The hovercraft moved smoothly over sand dunes and rocky outcrops, its engine humming like a quiet companion. Occasionally, they would see distant settlements, small clusters of buildings with neon lights, evidence of miners and traders eking out a living on the edge of nowhere. None of them seemed trustworthy, and the cowboy made a point of avoiding these places. Eventually, the girl could not keep her curiosity at bay. "Who are they?" she asked, nodding toward the distant settlements. "The people living there?" The cowboy did not answer immediately. He slowed the craft slightly, watching the horizon as if weighing his words. "People," he said finally, "can be good or bad. Most survive by staying quiet. Others take what they can." The girl thought about the bandits from yesterday and shivered. "Like them?" "Exactly like them." His eyes narrowed. "The frontier is full of people who will take advantage of the weak. That's why you stick close, listen, and act when necessary." She swallowed again, the weight of his words sinking in. Surviving yesterday had been luck and skill. Surviving the days ahead would require trust and courage. As the sun reached its peak, the desert heat pressed down, making the air shimmer. The hovercraft's engine whined faintly, adjusting to the rising temperature and shifting winds. The girl wiped the sweat from her brow and looked down at the canyon below. In the distance, a narrow path led toward a strange formation of rocks glowing faintly with neon veins, a mining outpost abandoned long ago. "Can we stop there?" she asked cautiously. "Maybe rest for a little?" The cowboy shook his head. "Not safe. Bandits or worse might be there. We'll keep moving." Her stomach tightened at his words. She wanted rest, warmth, a moment of peace, but the cowboy was right. Survival came first. By late afternoon, they encountered their first real obstacle, a patrol of mercenary drones scanning the desert floor. Sleek, metallic, and unfeeling, they hovered low, their sensors scanning for life. The cowboy's hands tightened on the controls. "Hold on," he muttered. He guided the hovercraft behind a rocky outcrop, ducking low as the drones passed overhead. The girl's heart raced as the machines scanned the area, their lights sweeping the desert like cold eyes. The cowboy waited until they were gone, then exhaled slowly. "Those machines," the girl said, shaking her head. "They're like the bandits, but worse. No mercy."
"No mercy," he agreed. "That's why we move fast and quiet."
"We survived by staying smarter than them." The rest of the afternoon passed in a tense rhythm of movement and careful observation. Every sound, every shimmer in the distance made the girl flinch. With each obstacle, the cowboy's skill became clear. He anticipated danger, avoided it when possible, and acted decisively when there was no choice. Slowly, the girl began to trust him, not just because he saved her, but because he knew the desert better than anyone she had ever seen. As night fell, the desert transformed. Shadows stretched long and strange, and the stars burned brighter than anywhere else she had ever seen. The cowboy brought the hovercraft to a quiet, hidden valley. Rocks offered protection from the wind, and a small pool of water reflected the moonlight. "We'll camp here," he said, dismounting with a soft grunt. "Rest, eat. Keep watch in turns." The girl followed, setting down the small pack she had been carrying. She hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask, why did you save me? Why risk yourself?" The cowboy looked at her, eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Because no one else would. And because someone has to do what's right." He did not elaborate, but his words carried weight. There was a hint of pain behind them, a past he had not shared. The girl nodded slowly. She understood, at least in part. The desert demanded courage, but sometimes it demanded more, a willingness to act when others would not. They built a small fire, careful to keep it low and hidden. The crackling of flames filled the quiet night, accompanied by distant sounds of the desert, animals, wind, and the occasional mechanical hum of far-off machines. The cowboy cooked a small meal, handing half to the girl. She ate slowly, the warmth of food and fire easing her tension. "Tomorrow," he said, "we move again. There's a safer path through the canyon toward a settlement where you can find real protection." She nodded, grateful for the clarity. "And the price? Your price?" You've already paid it," he said, eyes scanning the dark horizon. "Your trust. Stick with me, follow my lead, and you'll survive." The girl lay down beside the fire, staring at the stars. She thought about the tree, the bandits, the canyon, and the strange man who had saved her life. Trust was not easy for her, but she felt a small flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hours passed. The cowboy remained alert, checking the perimeter and adjusting their position to keep them safe. The girl drifted in and out of sleep, dreams filled with shadows of bandits and hovering drones. But the cowboy's presence was steady, a reminder that she was not alone. By dawn, they were on the move again. The desert had cooled, and the air smelled faintly of distant rain and ozone. The path ahead wound through jagged cliffs and narrow passes. The cowboy moved with careful precision, his mind calculating every risk. At one point, they encountered a narrow bridge spanning a deep canyon barely wide enough for the hovercraft. The girl's stomach tightened at the sight. "You've got this," the cowboy said. "Keep your balance. Trust me." The hovercraft glided across the bridge, the canyon far below looking impossibly deep. One misstep could be fatal. But the cowboy's calm presence guided her, and they crossed safely. Once on solid ground again, the girl let out a shaky laugh. I think I can trust you," she said, more to herself than him. The cowboy gave a faint smile. "Good. That's what keeps us alive." They continued, moving through rocky terrain and narrow passes. Each hour brought new dangers, hidden crevices, unstable rocks, and the occasional drone scanning from afar. But the cowboy's skill and her growing confidence kept them safe. By midday, they reached a small plateau overlooking the valley. In the distance, smoke rose from a settlement tucked between cliffs. It was a place of life, of safety, at least for now. "Is that where we're going?" she asked. "Yes," the cowboy said. "But even there, stay alert. The frontier is never completely safe." She nodded, determination settling in her chest. The journey was far from over, but she knew one thing. With the cowboy by her side, she might just survive it. And for the first time in a long while, she believed that maybe, just maybe, freedom was within reach. The valley lay quiet under the pale morning sun, but the cowboy knew better than to trust the calm. The desert had a way of lulling travelers into false security. Somewhere beyond the cliffs, danger waited, silent, patient, and ready to strike. The Apache girl walked beside him as they made their way down a narrow trail toward the small settlement they had spotted yesterday. She carried her pack more steadily now, moving with a confidence that had grown over the past 2 days. The rescue and journey had changed her. She was no longer just a frightened girl. She was learning to survive, learning to rely on both her instincts and the cowboy's guidance. "You've been quiet," she said, glancing at him. "Do you ever rest?" The cowboy's gaze stayed on the trail ahead. "Rest is a luxury," he said simply. "And the frontier doesn't allow luxuries." She frowned. "You mean because of the bandits?" "Bandits, drones, desert storms. Danger comes in many forms," he said. "You stay alert, you survive, you relax too soon, and you don't." The settlement looked abandoned from a distance, but closer inspection revealed life. Small figures moving between buildings, children playing near a central water source, miners repairing equipment. The place had a rustic charm, neon lights faintly glowing over dusty streets. The cowboy's eyes scanned carefully. "Looks peaceful," he muttered, "but never trust first appearances." The girl nodded, her stomach tight with nervous energy. The memories of the bandits in the canyon were still fresh, still raw. She followed him silently, keeping her eyes wide, watching for anything unusual. As they entered the settlement, the smell of cooking fires and livestock filled the air. People paused and looked at them, wary, but said nothing. The cowboy led the girl toward a small building at the edge of the main street. It was a safe house, or at least he hoped it would be. "Inside," he said, opening the door. The interior was simple. Rough wooden walls, a few tables, and a back room with supplies. "We'll rest here. Keep watch and don't make noise." The girl set down her pack and nodded. She was learning quickly that the cowboy's instructions were not suggestions. They were survival rules. They ate a small meal of preserved rations and water. The girl tried to eat quickly, but her hands shook slightly. I can't believe we made it," she said softly. The cowboy nodded. "We're not out of danger yet." His voice was quiet but firm. "You survived the tree, the canyon, and the drones. That's skill and luck. But skill and luck aren't enough. You have to keep moving, keep thinking, keep watching." The girl glanced at him, curiosity breaking through her nervousness. You've done this before, haven't you?" He looked away, staring at the wall as if seeing something only he could see. "More times than I can count. The frontier takes its toll." And he paused. "Sometimes I save people. Sometimes I don't make it in time." The girl's stomach tightened. She had never seen him vulnerable like this, never heard him speak of failure. She wanted to ask more, to understand the man who had risked everything for her, but the sound of movement outside interrupted her thoughts. The cowboy's hand went to his rifle. "Stay here," he said. The girl nodded, crouching behind a table as he moved toward the door. Outside, 3 figures approached, cautious but deliberate. Bandits. Her stomach dropped. She recognized the type. The same cruelty, the same greed that had put her in the tree 2 days ago. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. "They've tracked us," he whispered under his breath. "Get ready." The bandits paused at the edge of the settlement, scanning the streets. One pointed toward the building the cowboy had entered. "They're here," he growled. The cowboy slipped out quietly, moving from shadow to shadow. He observed their formation, their weapons, and the drones hovering above them. They were better equipped than the bandits he had faced in the canyon. These men were professionals. He needed a plan. He could not confront them directly. Too many variables, too many lives at stake. He studied the building, the surrounding streets, and the placement of crates and barrels. Then he acted. The cowboy triggered a small device from his pack. A low mechanical hum filled the air, drawing the drone's attention to the wrong side of the street. The bandits cursed, adjusting their position. That was all the distraction he needed. He moved silently behind them, disabling the first with a swift strike, using the shadows to stay hidden. The second tripped over loose rubble, giving him a moment to strike again. The third turned too late, and the cowboy disarmed him with a precise shot to the weapon, sending it skidding across the ground. The Apache girl watched in awe and fear from the window. She had seen him fight before, but this was different. He was faster, more controlled, his movements precise and calculated. And he fought for her life, for both of their survival. When the bandits finally regrouped, the cowboy was already moving, leading them through the narrow streets, setting traps, using the environment to his advantage. He pushed barrels to block paths, kicked up dust to obscure vision, and lured the drones into false positions. Finally, they cornered the remaining bandits near an abandoned water tower. The cowboy confronted them, his rifle ready, eyes steady. The bandits hesitated, realizing they had underestimated him. "Leave now," he said, "and don't come back." The bandits spat, furious, but knew better than to challenge him further. They retreated, disappearing into the distance. The drones followed, malfunctioning from the earlier traps. The girl ran to him, her legs shaky but determined. You saved us," she exclaimed. He shook his head slightly. "We saved ourselves, and we stay alive because we work together." She looked at him, noticing the small scar along his hand, the faint line of a wound that had healed long ago. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. The cowboy's eyes darkened for a moment. "A long time ago, I lost someone I couldn't save. Since then, I try to make sure others get a chance I didn't have to. That's why I do what I do." The girl's heart tightened. She understood, in a way, why he was so calm, so careful, so willing to risk everything for strangers. He carried his past with him, shaping his choices, his actions. The cowboy led her back to the safe house. "We rest here for now," he said. "Tomorrow we move again. There's a safer path through the canyon that will take you to a real settlement, a place where you can start fresh." The girl nodded, exhaustion catching up to her. "And the price, I've done my part, right?" "You have," he said. "Trust. That's all I asked. You followed my lead and you stayed alert. That's enough." Night fell once more. The desert air cooled, and stars shone brighter than she had ever seen. The girl lay down beside the fire, staring at the sky. The cowboy remained alert, checking the perimeter, listening to the desert. She felt a strange sense of safety, knowing he was there, protecting her. As sleep claimed her, she thought about the journey, the canyon, the tree, and the danger that still lurked beyond the valley. She had survived, not just by chance, but through courage, quick thinking, and the steady presence of the cowboy. When she awoke, the sun was just rising. The cowboy was already preparing the hovercraft, checking the fuel cells and weapons. He glanced at her. "Ready?" She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Ready?" Together they mounted the hovercraft, leaving the safe house behind. The frontier stretched before them, vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns. But she knew one thing. She could trust him, at least enough to follow him into the challenges ahead. The journey was far from over. More dangers would come. Bandits, mercenaries, and the harsh desert itself. But the Apache girl felt stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever felt before. And with the cowboy by her side, she had a chance not just to survive, but to find freedom, hope, and perhaps even a new beginning. The wind swept across the valley, carrying dust, scents of distant settlements, and a hint of metal from mining operations. Their silhouettes moved steadily across the desert, shadows cast long and strong against the rising sun. And somewhere beyond the cliffs, unseen, the world watched, waiting for the next move. The sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the jagged canyon walls with gold and orange. The frontier stretched endlessly ahead, vast, empty, and full of dangers waiting in the shadows. The Apache girl rode behind the cowboy on the hovercraft, her grip firm, her mind alert. Every muscle in her body was tense with anticipation. They were close to the settlement he had promised, safety at least for now. But the cowboy did not relax. He had learned long ago that the desert's quiet was often the loudest warning. Somewhere beyond the horizon, danger waited. The bandits from before might have regrouped, and other threats, mercenary drones, scavengers, or worse, could be nearby. Every shadow, every sound, every movement demanded attention. "Are we far?" the girl asked, her voice quiet but steady. She was learning to control her fear, to rely on observation and preparation rather than panic. "Not far," he said, "but keep your eyes open. The last stretch is always the hardest." The trail wound through a narrow pass, cliffs rising high on either side. The hovercraft hummed as it moved over uneven rocks and loose sand. Every step was careful, deliberate, because one mistake could send them tumbling into the canyon below. Suddenly the girl spotted movement ahead. A group of figures crouched behind boulders, weapons drawn. Her heart jumped. Bandits. They had tracked them again. The cowboy slowed the craft, crouching low behind a natural rock barrier. He studied their formation. 3 of them, he whispered. "And they've got drones above. Stay quiet, stay low." The girl nodded, gripping the straps tightly. Her mind raced, but she did not panic. She had learned from him. Think, observe, act. He fired a precise shot at one of the drones, making it spin out of control and crash into a boulder. Sparks flew and the bandit shouted in alarm. The girl ducked instinctively, heart pounding, as he moved through the shadows with careful precision. The bandits tried to regroup, but the cowboy was faster. He used the environment to his advantage, pushing loose rocks to create barriers, kicking up dust to obscure vision, and luring the drones into traps. The Apache girl watched in awe and fear as he moved like a shadow, striking with perfect timing and control. "You're incredible," she whispered under her breath. He glanced at her briefly. "Focus. Not over yet." One bandit tried to flank them from the side. The cowboy anticipated the move, firing a quick shot to disarm him, then pushing him into a pile of rubble. Another bandit aimed a pulse rifle at the girl, but she reacted just in time, ducking behind a boulder. The cowboy fired, hitting the weapon and rendering it useless. The last bandit hesitated, realizing he was outmatched. The cowboy stepped out of the shadows, rifle steady, eyes sharp. "Leave now," he commanded, "and don't come back." The bandit glared, fury in his eyes, but he knew better than to challenge the cowboy. He retreated, dragging the other 2 with him. The drones crashed or malfunctioned, leaving the valley eerily quiet once more. The girl exhaled, relief flooding through her. That was amazing," she said, voice trembling. The cowboy gave a faint nod, checking the surroundings one last time. "We're not out of the desert yet, but that's done for now." They moved carefully toward the settlement, keeping to shadows and natural cover. The small town rose ahead, tucked between cliffs, a mixture of wood, metal, and neon. Smoke from cooking fires drifted into the sky. For the first time in days, the girl felt a flicker of hope. The cowboy guided her to the edge of the settlement.
"This is it," he said.
"Safe for now. People here, they'll help you, but remember, trust carefully. Not everyone has good intentions." The girl dismounted, her legs shaky but steady. She looked at him, gratitude and curiosity mixed in her eyes. I don't even know how to thank you," she said softly. "You don't need to," he replied. "Just survive. That's thanks enough." She hesitated, then handed him a small token she had carried, a piece of carved wood, a symbol of her Apache heritage. "For luck," she said, "and for remembering." "I'll remember." His eyes softened, just slightly, revealing a hint of the man behind the cowboy. Someone shaped by loss, courage, and a determination to protect. They walked through the streets together. The townspeople watched but said nothing. Some offered cautious smiles, others kept distance. The girl felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The frontier had taught her that safety was never guaranteed. Inside a small building, the girl was greeted by a healer and a few townsfolk. They offered water, food, and a place to rest. The cowboy stood at the doorway, alert to every sound, every shadow. He had done his part. Now it was up to her to adapt, to survive in this new place. Before he left, the girl asked one last question. "Will you stay?" "My work isn't done. The frontier doesn't rest, and neither can I. But I'll be around if you need help. Just don't wait too long. You've got to stand on your own." The girl nodded, understanding. She felt stronger than before, braver, ready to face whatever came next. "I will," she said firmly. The cowboy mounted his hovercraft and gave a small wave. Without another word, he lifted off, disappearing into the desert horizon. The girl watched until he was just a speck, then turned toward the healer and the townsfolk who had offered sanctuary. She felt a strange mix of sadness and relief, but mostly she felt hope. The settlement would be her new beginning, a place to heal and grow. But she knew the frontier was vast, and dangers still lurked. Bandits, drones, and the desert itself would test her. Yet she felt ready. She had survived the tree, the canyon, the drones, and the bandits, and she had learned from someone who had lived through it all. Days passed, and she began to settle into the town. She helped with daily tasks, learned about the people, and slowly regained her strength. Each day brought small victories: a repaired fence, a successful hunt, a quiet walk through the streets without fear. The cowboy's lessons echoed in her mind. Trust wisely, act decisively, and never let fear control her. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, painting the sky with shades of red and gold, the girl stood at the edge of the settlement. She looked out over the desert, thinking of the cowboy who had saved her, who had taught her to survive. "I'll be ready," she whispered to the wind, "for anything." The desert was quiet, but not still. Somewhere in the distance, life continued. Strangers traveling, dangers lurking, and the endless possibilities of the frontier waiting to be discovered. The girl smiled faintly, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. She was no longer just a girl who had been captured and left hanging in a tree. She was a survivor, a fighter, and perhaps one day someone who could make her own mark on the frontier. As night fell, she sat outside the small building, gazing at the stars. The memory of the cowboy lingered, his calm, steady presence, his skill, and his determination to protect her. She didn't know where he was or if she would see him again, but she felt a strange sense of gratitude and connection. The frontier was harsh, dangerous, and unforgiving, but she had survived it, and she knew she could face whatever came next. Somewhere far away, the cowboy rode across the desert, alert and ready for the next challenge. He had saved a life, taught lessons, and left a mark, quiet but lasting. The Apache girl's journey had changed him as well, reminding him of why he risked everything for others, and why the frontier, no matter how harsh, was worth defending. The wind carried whispers through the canyon, telling tales of courage, survival, and trust. The Apache girl listened, letting the words settle in her heart. She was free now, in her own way, and the desert stretched out before her with endless possibilities. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. The future wasn't certain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready. She had survived the worst the frontier could throw at her, and she had learned the most important lesson of all: courage, trust, and determination could overcome even the harshest desert, the fiercest bandits, and the darkest fears. The night deepened, stars glittering like diamonds across the sky. Somewhere in the distance, the hovercraft of the cowboy hummed softly, moving silently across the desert, carrying him toward new adventures, while the Apache girl prepared to begin her own story. The frontier waited for no one, but she was ready. And so, the tale of survival, courage, and unexpected trust came to a close, at least for now. The desert was quiet, the dangers temporarily gone, and a new life awaited the girl who had once hung from a tree, begging to be saved. For a price paid and a trust earned, the Apache girl had found hope, freedom, and the promise of a future in the wild, endless frontier.